our GIs in World War II of fighting in both Europe against the Germans and in the Pacific against the Japanese. If you fought in both of those theaters and you were to ask those soldiers who they would rather fight against, they would fight the Germans every day. Okay, the Japanese were brutal. Very rarely did the Japanese surrender. Okay, many of them killed themselves rather than surrender. Okay, and when I go to this next slide, guys, in North Africa, we are going to capture 250,000 Germans. We didn't capture 25,000 Japanese in the entirety of the war. Okay, totally different enemy, totally different terrain. Okay, we're talking about tropical warfare, most of it. Okay, and jungle warfare. So it's horrible, and we're going to get a lot of that on the backside of this in the Pacific. Okay, so right now we're going to go back to the soft underbelly of the beast, right? North Africa and the Mediterranean. So if you'll recall, the Americans are going to land at Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers. The British are going to, under Montgomery, going to be pushing the Germans and Rommel back to Tunisia. Okay, I told you about Kasserine Pass, which is the first time the Americans faced the Germans. We were going to get our butts kicked. Now, one of the positive things that comes out of this, and this is the U.S. First Army, the Big Red One, U.S. First Army, got an amazing history in World War II. There's a movie called The Big Red One that follows this army all the way through the war. Okay, within embedded with the First Army is the 101st Airborne. Okay, and the 82nd Airborne. All right, so these guys are famous. All right, but they're going to get their butts kicked here at Kasserine Pass. The general in charge of the First Army when that happened was a guy named Friedendahl. He was 60 miles away from the battle when it took place. Eisenhower fired it. Roosevelt and Eisenhower fired it. And they put in charge of the U.S. First Army a different general. A badass general. General George S. Patton. Okay. This is a name that you should remember. Okay. Is George Patton. Now, if you recall, Patton has to go up the chain of command to Montgomery. And where's Montgomery from? He's England. Okay, he's British. Okay, and then Montgomery to Eisenhower. Okay, so Patton has to report to Montgomery, and he doesn't like it. And there's going to be a big rivalry between these two men. Okay, this rivalry. Okay, they both want the glory. So the Axis powers, the Italians at this point are still in the war. Okay, they're trying to escape. They're trying to fly out some of their best forces, their generals, and so forth. But some managed to escape, including Rommel. He got out. But we started taking out their transports, and then they were stuck right here on this peninsula right here in Tunis. Okay, and we will surround them. That'd be the Americans and the British 8th Army, the American First Army. Okay, and this is May 7th, 1943. 16 generals, 250,000 of the best German troops are captured. Now, what in the world are we going to do with 250,000 Germans? We're just going to build some camps in the desert and keep them there? What do you do with all these people? You're not going to let them go. They'll show up on the battlefield again. One of the interesting things about World War II here is actually many of these German prisoners of war are going to be sent back to the United States. And we're going to build prisoner of war camps in the United States. to house these Germans. Okay? There was one built in Concordia, Kansas. You guys know where Concordia is? You know 135 that goes up to Salina? Just keep going north. Up to the border with Nebraska. And right before the border of Nebraska is Concordia, for Cloud County Community College. Okay? And they built a prisoner of war camp that housed thousands of German prisoners of war. In the morning, they would eat breakfast, these POWs, these Germans, and then they would march them out to the farms outside of Concordia, and they would work on the farms. And then in the afternoon, they'd march back in after they worked and have dinner and go to bed and do it all over again. Now, what's interesting, many of you in this room are of German ancestry. Yes? And your grandparents and your great-grandparents came out here to Kansas. And many of them still spoke German when they came here. Yes? And so you had German POWs marching out to work on German-American farms. And the German-American farmers were speaking German to the German POW, which made anybody that wasn't German, that was living in Kansas, a little uneasy. But it's a strange twist, you know what I mean? And you have they built these in Arkansas, these POW camps to house these German prisoners of war. And they were treated fine, and when the war was over, most of them went back to Germany and looked for their families, which many of them did not find their families. Many of the families were dead. Okay? Some of them were allowed to stay. So it's kind of a cool history. And they still have, there's like a museum up there in Concordia. Kind of cool, okay? So, and that's not cheap, you know, shipping 200,000 men across the Atlantic and building all these POW camps and so forth. But it is cool history. Now, this paves the way for what? Here's Sicily. Just on the edge of that Sicily there is the toe of Italy. Yeah, okay? So that's where we're headed, I think. Yes. Okay. Let's get some more pictures here. Here's General Patton. Okay. This is General Montgomery, and then you've got this is Omar Bradley, General Bradley. Okay. Bradley was high up. Okay. He was very close with Roosevelt. Okay. But not a battlefield commander at this point. Okay. Now, so this is where we got the Germans. Okay, so this is the British 8th Army here, the American 1st Army, got 1st Armored Division, 9th Infantry Division, 9th Brigade. So this is where we got. Okay, just at that tip of Tunisia right here. Okay, they were trying to get out, but we stopped. Okay. So Sicily. The Italians are still in this war. The Italians control Sicily. Just can't. Don't have enough days. I don't have enough days. I got video clips on all this stuff. I can't. I don't have time. When you guys want to learn about the Cold War, you want to learn about civil rights, I mean, I got to spend some time on it. I got to get through this war. Okay? Loveless does this in like a week. Yeah, I mean, she like, yeah. Right through World War II. I can't do that. It's physically impossible for me. All right, so Sicily. Now, here's where I'm talking about this conflict between Patton and Montgomery. Okay, it almost gets to the point where it's childish. Okay, what we have here, I mean, Patton has a huge ego. This man believes that he was reincarnated for this moment in history, for the glory of victory over the Germans. I don't know if he was a cat or what, but he felt this man is an egomaniac. And you see this with a lot of people, people that run for office, presidents, you got to have a big ego to run for office. To run for president. And, you got to have an inflated view of yourself. And Patton certainly does. Okay? But he's good. He's good. He's going to help us win this war. And so Eisenhower puts up with a lot of his shenanigans because of it. Okay? And there's going to be a lot of shenanigans with Patton. He doesn't like to take orders. He likes to kick ass. Okay? So what we have here, guys, is a testosterone contest between Patton and Monty. So when they're going to invade this island, who gets to draw up the battle plan? Monty or Patton? Monty. He's in charge of Allied Expeditionary Forces, ground forces. So Monty is going to allow the British 8th Army to land here. Okay? Now this is a topographical map. The darker the red, the more hilly and mountainous it is. Yes? So he tells Patton, you guys have to land over here and go clear this whole area. We know the Germans and Italians are going to fall back around Mount Etna. This will be the Etna line here, okay? So Patton knows what's going to happen. Monty knows what's going to happen, so he's going to make Patton go do this, and all he's got to go is go straight here into the 8th Army. He's got an easier job, yes? And if he can defeat defeat the Germans here before Patton even shows up, who gets the glory? Monty gets the glory. The British get the glory. And Patton's like, we're not having that. Okay, so when I say testosterone contest, ladies, this is what I'm really talking about. I'm talking about a pissing contest. Okay, excuse my language. Okay, ladies, I don't know if you know this about little boys. Okay, but, and maybe you guys didn't do this, but me and my friends did. We used to see who could pee the first. Okay, we're like the most masculine. We pee the farthest. So this is what's going on here between these men. Okay, it's a pissing contest. I'm sorry. I hope your parents aren't watching. Okay, but they could probably back me up. All right, so anyhow, Patton's like, we're going. Don't stop. Kill the enemy, wade through them, keep going. And we're going to beat Monty to the Etna. Monty's going to take his time. Patton's going to haul ass. And guess what? When Monty gets there, Patton's waiting on him. What took you so long, Monty? We've cleared Sicily. What took you so long? You didn't even have to go to really any of our big mountains or anything. Okay. Now the Germans are going to run. They're running. The Italians are pretty much done. The Italian people are hearing about how many Italian soldiers are dying. They're fighting the Americans now. And they're like, we don't like this. And why are we following this Mussolini guy anyway? This Mussolini guy. This is how he's going to meet his fate. He will be drugged through the streets behind a vehicle. He will be shot in the head. He will be hung in a courtyard for people to pay their last respects. Hanging next to him is his mistress, who was killed as well. He was killed by the mob. Now, I don't know if you remember the beginning of class. I talked about this guy, Muammar Gaddafi from Libya. Met a similar death in the streets of Tripoli. Okay? Which you can find on YouTube. I'm not showing you that. Okay? Now, all right, so that's Sicily. I don't really have any notes over that. It's just that story, okay? And, we win. The Germans fall back, and then they start retreating to the toe. Have any of you guys been to Italy? One day. You got to go, okay? If nothing else, for the food. Or to go see the Pope, right? Go to that. Yes? I've been to Italy twice. Very blessed. I went in 99, where I did see Pope John Paul II in person. Okay? Little Catholic envy there. Well, it was just, that's how big he looked, because he was in a window of, and we were in St. Peter's Square, and he was up in a window. I got a picture. He looks this big, in the picture. And then we went 2 years ago. So, but the food is amazing. It's indescribable. Best food in the world, I think. Okay? And I've been a lot of places. I've been to China. Definitely better than food in China. Definitely better than food in England, which is the worst. Their food is horrible. Unless you like fish and chips, fried fish. Well, they're cod. But other than that, everything else is awful. So, all right, back to this. All right, so we are going to create what is going to be, at the time, the world's largest amphibious invasion in history. Okay, so we're going to have 250,000 troops. Oh, this is Sicily. Okay, 250,000. Okay, German Italian forces escaped to Italy. The Italians now have enough. Mussolini is forced to resign. The Italians begin making peace with the Allies. The Germans are going to fight in Italy. Just because the Italians drop out of the war, does that mean Germany's like, oh, they're out, so we're just going to go home? No. Right? So one of the reasons I asked if you've been to Italy is because the countryside, okay? I have another topographical map here, okay? And I'll go back to that other slide, that other picture in a second. But you can see here, the darker the colors, the higher the elevation in Italy. And if you drive through Italy, okay, or go on a train, you know, you start up here in Venice. A lot of people go to Venice first, and then they'll go down to Florence and then Rome, and you get the wine country, okay? It's all really hilly. Okay, so for the Germans, they can take the high ground. You know what I mean? They're retreating to Italy. They take the high ground, and then we're going to have to invade. And that's going to make it very, very bloody, okay, for the Americans and the British. This is going to be very difficult fighting against the Germans. Right? Again, I bring up the 88 millimeter gun that the Germans have. Their howitzers, their tanks, their machine guns, their mortars from the high ground. Okay. So let me show you kind of what our strategy was here. All right, so the British 8th Army, okay, is going to attack at the toe. You got to give Monty some props here. This is not going to be an easy battle here at the toe, okay, because it's easy for the Germans to concentrate a lot of strengths in that small area, okay. The British are also going to kind of flank them here at Taranto, and then the British and Americans, mostly Americans here, are going to land at Salerno. Here's Salerno, okay? And you can see these are German defenses, okay? And then later, we will go a little bit further up to a place called Anzio. All right, now, here's Rome, okay? Venice is up here. Florence is in the middle of the country here. Right. Those are kind of three main cities you'll go to if you go to Italy. I mean, this is beautiful coast up here and so forth. And then you got mountains in the north, okay, of Italy, like big mountains, Alps, okay. But so Salerno, guys, is not going to be very good, the fighting. I'll show you the map again here in a second. The Germans have the high ground. And so the Germans are going to leave 23 divisions in Italy that we're going to have to defeat. And from the time we landed in Sicily to the time we take Rome, 1 year. Okay, 1 year of fighting. All right, so this, if nothing tells you how tough that is, it took a whole year. You know what I mean? So the Germans are going to put up very tough defense. Now, if you look at that date, June 5th, 1944, when we take Rome, that's the day before what day? D-Day, June 6th, 1944. Okay. So a lot happened there. Now, when we take Rome, guys, it's a huge celebration. I mean, the Italians are just grateful for the sacrifice of the Americans and the British on their soil. Because a lot of Americans are going to die. Okay. And the Italians, I think, tend to be still grateful to this day. Now, obviously, that generation is is moving on, just like the guys that fought there. Most of them are gone now. The generation that watched us liberate them, most of them are gone as well. But I think the Italians still remember. I mean, this is stuff they teach in their schools and so forth. And I've been fortunate. The last time we were there, I want to show you this. I was really fortunate to. We took Lily and Jack with us, and it was like a 9-day tour of Italy with a group. We went with a group, and so it was like 25 people, different families from all over the United States. And one of the guys that was with us was a Vietnam vet, and the lady that was doing the tour for us, she said, "Is there anything like that's not on our agenda? Because we're going to Florence, doing Venice, and Rome, okay? And anything that's not on our agenda that you guys want to do?" And this vet said, "Well, how about something like on World War II? Like a museum or something on World War II." And so she didn't say anything to us, but on our way, we were on a bus from Venice to Florence. On our way, we took a detour, which none of us really knew we were taking a detour. We were just riding on the bus, you know what I mean? And we show up at this cemetery, okay? And this is an American cemetery in Italy, okay? Now, there was a lot of fighting, like I said, in Italy. And most of the scholarship on this is getting to Rome. There's not a lot of stuff out there about what happened after we took Rome. We still had to fight the Germans and get them out of the country totally. And so a lot of Americans died north of Rome. And that's what this cemetery is for. Okay, now, if a soldier died on Italian soil, their family was told we can bring the body back to the States and bury them in the States, or we can bury them where they fell, in Italy. Okay, so about a third of those that died in northern Italy, the family said, lay them to rest in Italy. And so they built this American cemetery there. Okay, so when you go to this place, and I've been to the one in Normandy in France as well, it's really kind of sobering to see all these American gravestones. And you see their names. Okay, I took a close picture of this one. You might not be able to. It says Grover G. Lynn, Staff Sergeant, 473rd Infantry Regiment, Kansas. Died on April 17th, 1945. Guys, the war in Europe ended on May 8th. So this guy died about 3 weeks before the war ended in Italy. They were still fighting. Okay. So let me show you some more pictures that I took here. This wall is of people that are missing in action. People that just died in Italy, presumably, but bodies have never been found. Okay. All of these names. Okay, so I took a close-up picture here, okay? And so you got Solis, boy, that's the name I just talked about in government class. Schmidt, and it shows, now what's interesting here, guys, check this out. 759 Bomber Squadron, 723rd Bomber Squadron, 718 Bomber Squadron, almost all of these. Now this is infantry, bombing group, bomber, infantry, 91st Division. Okay, so many of these were on planes that were shot down. They never found their bodies. Now, occasionally, see, there's a little star right here. There's an Italian, going through the woods or in their backyard digging a garden, and they come across some bones, and they DNA test the bones and see what's in, around the body, because sometimes there's dog tags and stuff like that in there. Okay, this guy was found. Now, you guys know Coach Gann, who coaches football. He's a former Marine. Okay, this was his last job with the Marines, was to try and find. I told you guys that story about the the aluminum trail over the Himalayas, all those planes that went down, okay, where they're still trying to find our veterans. These guys are all still missing in action from World War II. Okay, really didn't know that. Okay, and so occasionally they find one. It was kind of cool. The guy that was giving us the tour said, yeah, they found a guy from Arkansas last year, and the family came over. Okay, it's pretty neat. This is just a big map that they have at the memorial, and these are some of the patches of the guys that fought in the in that battle in North Italy. Okay, so I got 5. How many minutes? Yeah, 35. Okay, sweet. All right, I got to tell you a story. Couple stories. All right. Now, first one, I'm going to talk about a Kansas that fought in Italy. Okay, don't read this. You can't read this. I'm going to read it to you. Okay. So this Kansan is a guy named Bob Dole. Bob Dole. He's from Russell, Kansas. All right. And at 18 years old, Bob Dole volunteered to go into the Army. Okay. From Russell, Kansas. You got served by Russell, right? There's a sign that says there's 2 American senators born in Russell, Kansas, Arlen Specter and Bob Dole. And they both served in the Senate at the same time. One a Republican, one a Democrat. Dole was a Republican. He ran for president in 1996. Bob Dole was fighting in Italy, and a mortar round went off right next to his body. It basically shredded the right side of his body. He spent 6 months in the hospital recovering. Okay. While Bob Dole was in the hospital, he said, when I get back to Kansas, when I get old enough, I'm going to run for Congress. Okay? He was laying in a bed next to another badly wounded soldier named Daniel Inouye. On the next slide. Okay? Bob Dole ran for Congress, and he won. And then he won for the Senate. And guys, at one point, Bob Dole was the Senate Majority Leader of the United States Senate, the most powerful man in the Senate. And like I said, ran for president in 1996. If you ever saw Bob Dole out campaigning, you saw him on TV, Bob Dole always carried a pen in his right hand. Because when you go out and campaign, you go out and shake hands, right? Kiss baby. Right? That's what you do. Bob Dole couldn't shake your hand. He lost the use of that right hand in World War II. So he'd hold that pen so people wouldn't reach out to shake it. You know what I mean? And then he'd shake your hand like this. How you doing? I can't do that anymore with COVID, but you know, shake your hand and say, how you doing? Okay. Bob Dole. Now he was laying in that hospital bed for a couple of months with a guy from Hawaii. This guy, Daniel Inouye. Now guys, in the homework that's due tomorrow night, there's a question about the Japanese internment, about how the U.S. government. You guys do your NHD?
No, I did my book on it.
Oh, your book. Okay. Yeah, I read that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I read your review. Yeah. I made comments. Did you read my comments?
No, because I can.
You guys read my comments?
I would, but
I mean, come on, because I take time. Like, I'm like spending 15, 20 minutes on your paper. I'm not just saying, oh, that looks good. That's a 95. I'm not doing that. I can't sleep at night if I do that. You understand? Just like I can't sleep at night if I don't tell you the story. Okay? All right. So Daniel Inouye, his family, and many others, not his family. He lived in Hawaii. Okay? Guys, there were a lot of Japanese Americans in Hawaii. So a lot of those people didn't get interned in Hawaii. But if you lived on the West Coast, okay, California, Oregon, Washington State, there was a good chance, even if you were a U.S. citizen, you were told that you were going to be interned in a camp because we can't trust you. That you would have more loyalty to the Emperor of Japan than to the United States. That you might be a spy. And this is a really tough story, right? And this is done by executive order by Roosevelt And the governor of California is a guy named Earl Warren. I don't know if they talked about him in your book. Earl Warren would go on to become the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, 1953 to 1969. Asked later on if he would intern the Japanese again. He had to do it over again. You know what he said? He said yes. Okay. Now, there is a debate. Okay. Now, you don't have to agree with this debate. Okay. But there was a real fear after Pearl Harbor that the Japanese may try and invade the West Coast of the Union. And there was a real fear that these Japanese Americans may have more loyalty to Japan than the United States. A lot of that is born out of ignorance of the Japanese people and their culture and so forth. Okay, but that fear was there. It was. I don't know if I'd say it's a legitimate fear, but there was fear. Okay, and when there's fear, people are going to act. Okay, and what the Japanese did to us was straight up sneaky. Okay, they didn't warn us. They attacked us out of nowhere, and the people were mad, and they were scared. Did we have defenses along the West Coast to stop a Japanese invasion? No. Like the British did? So, anyhow, Daniel Inouye joined the military, and they put together a unit of all Japanese American fighters. Many of these left the camps that their families were being housed in to go fight for a country that was detaining their family without due process. This regiment of all Japanese Americans was known as the 442nd Regiment. They're fighting for a country that is abusing their families. So they're fighting with a chip on their shoulder, okay, to prove their loyalty to this country, for one, and to honor their family. These guys, this regiment, 442nd Regiment, is one of the most decorated regiments of the entire war. How do you get decorations in warfare? Not just combat, but things like uncommon valor, going above and beyond the call of duty. They did that, many of them. This guy, for sure. Let me read you this, guy. He's fighting in northern Italy, April 21st, 1945. This is just like, again, like just a few days. I showed that April 17th, right? Okay. So Inouye was grievously wounded while leading an assault on a heavily defended ridge near San Terenzio in Tuscany, Italy. The Colle Mustello, the ridge served as a strong point of German fortifications known as the Gothic Line, the last and most unyielding line of German defense works in Italy. As he led his platoon in a flanking maneuver, 3 German machine guns opened fire from covered positions 40 yards away. Okay, so you think about the football field. Okay, you're at the goal line, the 40 yards. Okay, pinning his men to the ground, Inouye stood up and was shot in the stomach. Ignoring his wound, he proceeded to attack and destroy the first machine gun nest with hand grenades and his Thompson machine gun. Okay, the Thompson machine gun. Have you guys seen my grenade?
The pineapple one?
Yeah.
I just think it's on your desk.
Did somebody steal my grenade? You don't remember? You remember seeing it? Okay. Somebody might have walked off with my grenade.
You should just tell me it's live.
Yeah. All right. Anyhow, look here real quick. Grenade. All right, that's a World War II gun right there. Okay. All right, so now Thompson machine gun. All right, it's not the one like the Tommy gun. It's a machine gun. Okay. All right, so anyway, shot in the stomach, attack. Okay. Now, after he took out this nest, he was informed of the severity of his wounds. He refused treatment rallied his men for an attack on the second machine gun post, which he successfully destroyed before collapsing from blood loss. As his squad distracted the third machine gunner, Inoue crawled towards the final bunker, coming within 10 yards. He raised himself up and cocked his arm to throw the last grenade. 10 yards away, machine gunner. The guy's reloading. Goes to do this, okay? Soldier inside the bunker fired a rifle grenade. So it wasn't a bullet, but a grenade that hits his right arm. Okay? Right elbow, nearly severing most of his arm and leaving his primed grenade. He's pulled the pin. He's waiting to get shot here. It's still in his fist. Okay? Leaving his primed grenade reflexively, quote, clenched in a fist that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. His arm was dangling. Anyways, horrified soldiers moved to his aid, but he shouted for them to keep back out of fear of his severed fist would involuntarily relax and drop the grenade. From his useless right hand, he transferred it to his left. The enemy soldier aimed his rifle at him. Anyway, tossed the grenade into the bunker and destroyed it. He stumbled to his feet and continued forward, silencing the last German resistance with a one-handed and left-handed burst from his Thompson machine gun before being wounded in the leg and tumbling unconscious to the bottom of the ridge. He awoke to see worried men of his platoon hovering over him. His only comment before passing out or being carried away was to order them back to their positions, saying nobody called off the war. That's the kind of stuff that'll get you the Medal of Honor. Laying in a bed next to Bob Dole, Bob Dole says, when I get back to Kansas, I'm going to run for Congress. Daniel Inouye went back to Hawaii, and he ran for Congress. Both men served together in the United States Senate for many years. And Inouye actually became the Senate President pro tempore, which is the longest serving member of the majority party at the time. So while Bob Dole was the Senate majority leader, Daniel Inouye became the Senate President pro tempore. Different years, but they were serving at the same time. Isn't that a good story? Holy crap. Daniel Inouye passed away a few years ago. I think about 3 years ago. Bob Dole is still alive. We had to look it up last year. We weren't sure. He's not doing very well, but he's still kicking. Okay? And his wife, Elizabeth Dole, she ran the American Red Cross for a few years. Good people, for sure. Okay? So Italy, guys, that was pretty good story. Okay, so hey, don't miss out on tomorrow's lecture. I'm going to start talking about the air war. All right, and somehow I'm going to try and get you guys show you some of these videos. Okay, I know YouTube has some of them, and at least one day I'll just say the heck with YouTube and bust them out. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good day.